Rumpelstiltskin. There lived a miller, who had a beautiful daughter. Now it happened that the miller had to visit the king's castle, and while he was going through the garden, he met the king face to face. The king, seeing the poor miller, spoke to him kindly, and the miller, who wished to be thought very rich, told the king that he had a daughter who could spin straw into gold. "Ah," said the king, "that is a great art, and I should like above all things to have your daughter come to the castle and spin for me." Then indeed the miller was afraid, but he had to do as the king ordered, and so the next day he brought his daughter to the castle. The greedy king, who loved gold above all things, led the poor girl into a room filled with straw, in the middle of which stood a spinning wheel with many spindles about it. "There," said the king, "is your spinning wheel, and here is the straw. If you do not spin all of it into gold by tomorrow morning, your head shall be cut off." Then he left the maiden, and carefully locked the door behind him. The poor girl could only sit and weep, for she had not the least idea how to spin straw into gold. In the midst of her tears the door flew open, and a little old man, with bandy legs, and a fiery red nose sprang into the room. Taking off his long peaked cap, he bowed low to the maiden, and said, "Good evening, my dear young lady. What is the cause of these tears?" "Alas," answered the girl, "I am here by order of the king, who has told me that I must spin this straw into gold or lose my life." Then the mannikin said, "What will you give me if I will spin it for you?" "This string of gold beads," answered the maiden. The little man took the beads, slipped them into his pocket, and sat down before the spinning wheel. Hardly had the wheel begun to sing its whir, 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 when the maiden saw that the spindle was filled with the finest of spun gold. Again the wheel went humming round, and again the spindle was filled. The little man kept so busily at work that before long all the straw was gone, and in its place were spindles full of gold. The next morning at sunrise the king unbolted the door, and his greedy eyes were filled with joy at sight of the golden spindles. These riches made the king even more greedy than before, and leading the maiden into a still larger chamber, where there was a great pile of straw, he said, "Young woman, if you value your life, you must spin this straw into gold before tomorrow's sun." Then he turned and left the room. The maiden's eyes filled with tears at sight of this huge heap of straw, and sitting down, she began to weep. All at once the door opened, and in jumped the mannikin. Going up to the weeping maiden, he took off his pointed cap, and said, "What will you give me if I help you again, and spin this straw into gold?" "The ring from my finger," said the maiden. The little man took the ring and put it in his pocket. Then sitting down before the spinning wheel, he began to spin, and so quickly did he work, that long before daylight the straw had all been turned into gold. The next morning when the king looked upon the heap of golden spindles, he thought it the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. But the pile of gold only made him eager for more, and taking the maiden by the hand, he led her to a still larger chamber quite full of straw. Indeed, there was hardly room for the girl to sit with her die. Spinning wheel. As the king was about to leave the room, he said to the maiden, "This straw you must also spin into gold before tomorrow's sun, or you shall, but if you can do the task, I will marry you and make you queen over my whole kingdom." "For," thought the king, "though she is only a miller's daughter, yet with her spinning wheel she can make me the richest king in the world." Hardly had the door closed behind the king, when the little man came hopping and skipping into the room, and taking off his pointed cap, he said, "What will you give me if I will spin this straw for you as I have done before?" "Alas," answered the maiden, "I have nothing more to give." "In that case," said the mannikin, "I cannot help you, unless you will promise to give me your first child after you have become queen." "Well," thought the maiden, "it is my only hope, and who knows what may happen." So she gave her promise to the little man. Then the mannikin sat down at the spinning wheel, and soon the wheel began to whir, and the spindles were filled with gold. When the king opened the door the next morning and saw the beautiful maiden sitting in the midst of the golden spindles, he was very glad to keep his promise, and the poor miller's daughter became queen over the whole kingdom. About a year afterward, a beautiful little prince was born in the castle. The queen had forgotten all about her promise to the little man, until one evening he came into the room and asked her to give him her child. The queen was so filled with terror that she fell on her knees, and begged the little man to take all the riches of the kingdom, but to leave her the child. "No," said the little man, "I will not do it. Something living will please me more than all the riches in the world." Then the queen began to weep and to beg so hard for her child that at last the little man had pity upon her, and said, "I will give you one chance. If within 3 days you can guess my name, you shall keep your child." The queen lay awake that night thinking of all the names she had ever heard. In the morning men were sent to every part of the kingdom, to write down the strangest names they could find. The next evening the little man came again, and the queen began to call off to him all the names that she had found: Caspar, Melchior, Balgar, and many, many others. But at each one the little man shook his head, and said, "No, that is not my name." The second day the queen had her servants go from house to house through the town and take down the name of every man, woman, and child. When the little man came that evening, she had a long list of strange names to give him. "Perhaps your name is Cowribs, Spindleshanks, or Lacelegs," she said. But he answered to each one, "No, that is not my name." On the third day, the men came back who had been sent over the kingdom to search for new names. The queen could get no help from them, until at last one came, who said, "I have not been able to find any new names, but on the side of a high mountain in the deep woods I heard a fox wish good night to a rabbit. Soon I came upon a little house in front of which a fire was burning. Around this fire danced a little man, with a pointed cap and a nose which was fiery red, and as he went hopping and jumping about, first on one leg and then on the other, he sang, 'My baking and brewing I'll do today, the queen's son tomorrow I'll take away. No wise man can show the queen where to begin, for my name, to be sure, is Rumpelstiltskin.'" The queen clapped her hands for joy. She knew that at last she had found the name of the queer little man. Haying sent the servant away with a bag of gold, she waited for the mannikin to come to her. Soon the little fellow came hopping and skipping up to the queen, and said, "Now, O queen, this is your last chance to tell me my name." Then the queen asked, "Is your name Conrad?" "No." "Henry?" "No." "Then your name is Rumpelstiltskin." "The fairies have told you." "The fairies have told you," shouted the little man. He became so angry that in his rage he stamped his right foot into the ground with such force that he sank up to his knee in the earth. This made him more angry still, and taking hold of his left leg with both hands, he pulled so hard that he tore himself quite in two.